We're good. Okay, everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's Force Space, and thank you so much for joining us for today's event. Ecological Scale, Final Projects from the Performance, Ecology, and Sustainability course. Now, to help situate you, we're streaming live to YouTube from Force Space, and we are located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. Here at Force Space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge, co-create daily activities, and examine research questions and projects happening across the university. Today we're running this event as a live stream Zoom meeting, so anyone joining us there, if you have any comments or questions, just pop them into the chat. Those of you in the space, just so that we can hear on the recording on YouTube, etc., we will pass a microphone around to you. And for those of you up at the front presenting, their microphone is on the little stand there, so just speak right into it, as Jack's talked about. With that, it's very much my pleasure to hand it over to Assistant Professor in Theater and Prof for the course, Mo Beatix. Mo, welcome back.
Hey. Thank you so much. Awesome. So again, yeah, I'm Mo Beatix. I'm Assistant Professor in Theater with a focus on sustainable design with and for performance and scenography. And this is the final presentations for the Performance, Ecology, and Sustainability course, which is technically a scenography course, but we have had students from film studies, from animation, from computation arts, from a variety of different approaches. So you're going to see a lot of different engagements with concepts of sustainability and ecology in art-making practices. So for this particular assignment is called Ecological Scale. The prompt was for students to ask themselves, what if a performance lasted as long as a geological epoch, a season, or the life of a tree? How would you create a festival together with mycelium? How would you collaborate with a koala? What if you had the budget for a planet-scale event? How is the meaning of an existing work affected by an ecological entity? And how is a new work defined by it? And students were also encouraged to explore that prompt in relationship to their own artistic practices and their own experiences of sustainability, or what they experience to be an urgent need within sustainability. So you are going to see methods for supporting current structures of performance, as well as wild reimaginings in terms of what the creative capacities of performance can be in relationship to sustainability. And with that, I would like to introduce our first presentation. I'm going to call the students up one by one, ask them to introduce themselves to the virtual and public audience, give their name, and anything else they want to offer before they launch in. And again, I'm Mo Beatix, she, they. Thanks so much.
Just a quick note before you begin. I'm back here. I'm Doug. I'm going to be driving with the PowerPoints, and so if anything happens or you want to jump out to a video, I think I have it all ready to go, but you can just ask me and I'll make a go. And you should be able to advance your slides with the clicker.
Okay, perfect.
But if you can't, I can do it. Okay.
Okay, great.
Feel free to just chat to me back here.
Okay. I'm Niall, and what I have imagined is this idea of a plant concert. And basically, I want to create a space where plants can play music. And so what I was inspired by is, I'm sure some of you are familiar with Mort Garson, and he made this album called Mother Earth's Plantasia. Oh, sorry. There we go. And yeah, it has these beautiful different songs that are basically named after different plants. If you could actually play the YouTube video that I also have linked, just so everyone can get a sense of it. just some of it. And so the album was made. Great, thank you so much. And so yeah, this album is made for plants and for them to enjoy it. So I thought of an idea of what if plants were to make music for us and how we could enjoy it. So I want to build a space where people can go listen to plants play music live. And I would also want it to be an eco-friendly environment and be built from sustainable resources, and create the space that brings mood enhancement. And as studies have shown, that plants are pertinent in reducing stress, inspiring creativity, and helping to incite focus. Okay, so the location would be in a city, ideally Montreal. And given our location in Montreal, and it can become very cold in the winter, I'd want to have windows on the south wall, where a lot just to help keep heat within, as well as I'd like it to be built from wood that would be sourced locally. And as well, since the different plants I would have inside have different light requirements, I'd want to orient the building so that some of the plants could be hidden from the sun, where others could be more exposed to it. So what I'd want to do is I'd have a bunch of plants, which I'm going to get into which kinds I'd have in, and I would have amps hooked up to the plants and instruments, and these instruments would play through the plants and into the speakers, and people would attend the show and listen. And it would kind of be a sensorial experience where it's not just kind of enhancing your mood from the actual vibe of the plants, but also it's relational to smell, sound, of course, and visuals. And so I would want the floor to be filled with moss, and as well as going onto the walls. And so how to collect moss is you can do that through nearby forests or other places. And to grow it, a starting point would be to get a clear glass container with a lid and to place 1 inch of pebbles in the bottom and top with granulated charcoal and rocks. And add 2 inches of potting soil and mist it with water. Then 2 sheets of moss and crumbles of moss flakes go within, and then you'd cover the container. And the moss doesn't need too much moisture or light. So I would also I was researching different trees that thrive indoors, which can be fiddle-leaf fig, Norfolk island pine, yucca, I'm actually not sure how to pronounce that one, parlor palm, corn plant, ponytail palm, rubber tree, and there's various more. And the conditions range on what they need. And so you'd have to put it within a pot that's relative to the size, that as it grows, you need to keep changing the pot. Also, you'd need good quality soil. And so obviously this would take a lot of time as well. So this would be kind of the creating of the space would be like quite a long process before it could be in use. I'd also want to have mushrooms and fungi. And so I was trying to research how you can grow your own mushrooms inside. And so there's actually kits you can buy. And there's 2 ways you can do it yourself, where you can, with the kit is a lot easier. So you have pre-inoculated log that needs to be soaked for 24 hours. And then you'll be drilling holes the size of plugs that will go through. And then you'd use wax to cover the holes to protect the spores. So, and this is a drawing I have of my space, a little space with these walls and the moss covered. And then I have these trees and the speakers and the cords running through everything, the moss, the trees, and the mushrooms. And yeah, I picture this space as being somewhere where I think I would feel very just positive being and like helping with my own mental health. Because in my own bedroom, I've been collecting a lot of plants and trying to help with my mood, and I've been finding they're helping. And I find like creating a symbiotic relationship between the two has been very beneficial. Yeah, and here are my sources, and yeah. Thank you for listening.
Oh, here, let me
This
back
is
to
a
the
few
beginning.
slides ahead.
Go back.
You could go back a little bit. There. All right, so my name is Annika, and thinking of an ambitious work in collaboration with an ecological identity, my mind goes to a place where I'm not only working with one organism, but a symbiosis of many. Here, I have come up with the idea of the film festival, or that way. All right. I think of how important it is to collaborate and share our work as filmmakers, especially coming from the film department. And having a space amongst other independent artists is incredibly valuable and rewarding in a society that focuses so heavily on independence. With ideas of ecological sustainability and collaboration, I am proposing an environmental film festival, a place where creatives inspired and committed to sustainability can have their work showcased. Across the world, there are many pre-existing successful environmental film festivals, such as BCEFF, the British Columbia Environmental Film Festival, and Planet in Focus, which is located in Toronto, whose mission is to enlighten, engage, and entertain audiences of all backgrounds through film. This event, which I'm naming the Metamorphosis Film Festival, will seek to unite artists from around the world with the ultimate goal of uplifting artists committed to sustainable creative practices. While many festivals are committed to spreading awareness, while important, I'd like to also explore avenues outside of documentary filmmaking. Inspirations. Drawing on inspirations from the aforementioned festivals, I also began thinking about what kinds of films would best represent my intentions for the festivals. My mind wanders to artist and filmmaker Stan Brakhage, who's my main inspiration for the festival's curation, specifically his film from 1963, Mothlight. The experimental film combines clippings from leaves, flowers, and actual wings that have been glued and printed straight onto a film strip. The film is one of a kind, as nowhere in its process does it use a camera. It is one level a parable of death and resurrection, but most really concerns the persistence of existing form, image, and motion of being. The film provides a unique way of approaching filmmaking that is not only connecting us to ecological identities and concepts, but showcases a unique way of creating images using our surrounding environment. As a general theme for my festival, I seek to explore ecological metamorphosis, specifically drawing inspiration from the life cycle of the monarch butterfly, not only focusing on the metamorphosis from egg to caterpillar to butterfly, but also from their migration cycle. Monarch butterflies go through 4 life cycles in a year, with the last migration to warmer climates such as Mexico from October to March. Thank you. And so there you can see the migration cycle. The main idea is to have it starting in Canada, where the butterflies begin their life cycle, and then ending in Mexico, where they migrate for the warmer climates. When and where? This festival will take place in 2 different locations through the year to simulate the monarch's migration pattern. The first screening will be held in May during the monarch's first breeding period in North America. It will be hosted at the Niagara Falls Butterfly Conservatory. The conservatory was built in 1966 and remains one of the largest sanctuaries in North America. It provides lush habitat of over 2,000 butterflies in a variety of vegetation. The conservatory serves as a safe haven for mating metamorphosis before they embark on their first migration. The second part of the touring festival will be south of the monarch's migration pattern in Mexico. The monarch butterfly Biosphere Reserve consists of over 560 square kilometers, home to 4 different sanctuaries and over 60 million monarch butterflies. The festival will take place in January at the El Rosiero Sanctuary during this time. The butterflies are the most abundant and bring in a large amount of visitors. Both locations provide critical ecological habitats for the butterflies while maintaining a positive relationship with human viewership. Both sanctuaries are also already equipped with theaters, which is quite handy when it comes to curating a festival. And so here are images of the two areas. There's the Niagara Conservatory and then the one in Mexico as well. And so how am I working alongside the butterflies? Taking inspiration from their life cycle and migration of the monarch butterfly, the festival sets out to create a unique environment that fosters artistic metamorphosis, whether that be through physical change of oneself or environment, the natural ecological cycle of the world, or simply one's own artistic journey. The Metamorphosis Film Festival seeks to work alongside the monarch's natural rhythm to encourage a celebration of life's ever-changing natural cycles and the lush organisms inhabiting our planet, all while stressing the importance of sustainable climate action. The nature of the film festival resembles many ecological life cycles. Through encouraging the submission of films throughout the world, we can gain a wider perspective of the lives and artistry from those around us. Festivals foster connection like no other. They are simply conservatories for artists. Here, films are celebrated and brought to life through community, where they migrate across the globe to share their messages with others. Through this ecosystem, we can elevate films that break conventions of mainstream artistry through the use of sustainable practices. And then here's just brainstorming. There's a film poster or festival poster that I drew, and then just a few kind of brainstorming ideas for screenings and locations. And then bibliography. That's all. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Hi, my name is Hamda. My project is called Ballads and Bird Songs Festival. The idea behind it is basically a festival using just bird sounds. Cool. So I guess festival season is around the corner, and that's kind of what inspired this project. There's a lot of outdoor festivals that happen throughout Canada and Montreal specifically. Outdoor festivals in Montreal and just all around Canada. And there is a lot of question about how music festivals can go green. A music festival requires a huge amount of electricity to keep the lights, the performance equipment, everything, even just the cheap flights you can get into Montreal, for example. It just requires a lot of energy. A large music festival can use over 30,000 megawatts of energy in just a single weekend, which is stressful to hear. There have been a lot of festivals have tried to be more ecological. Osheaga, that happens in Montreal, their promoters have been launching a series of eco-friendly initiatives throughout the year to try to make it just more sustainable. A lot of reusable water bottle stations have been implemented at Osheaga, which has been really nice, but the festival usually is left with so much litter and so much plastic everywhere. Yeah. Well, I wanted to try to use what we have around us, so birds. We have a lot of songbirds that are local to Canada, and they're just the nature that is accessible around us. Songbirds, what are they? They're birds that perch and sing. They all share a distinct arrangement that helps them grasp branches. They have a foot mutation. They have precise control of a highly specialized vocal organ called a syrinx. And when a bird exhales, it engages the muscle in the syrinx, and that's what makes the music, or their ballads. Scientists are finding that more bird songs are parallel to human singing. Yeah, and studies show that it's structurally similar to our own tunes that we create. Just like humans, birds learn songs from each other and practice to perfect them. And just as human speech is distinct from human music, bird calls are not the same as birds singing. And bird songs have inspired classical musicians like Mozart and even artists like Bob Marley. So my idea is having this festival that is basically outdoors. It can be anywhere where you have a large, just a bunch of nature as a forest, preferably. Oh, no. It's supposed to be a video here. Oh no. Okay, well, it's supposed to be a video. The location is, I don't know if I can maybe pull it up. But just in nature, a forest somewhere near you that you have access to just nature. It wasn't a separate link, it was just kind of add on where you saw the location. It was a forest. It wasn't, it's okay, it was just a background, a forest that moved forward, and you kind of like walk into it, and that was kind of the idea of it. I'll just switch to the next one. Okay, that's okay, no problem. It's not working. Okay, cool. So this is our lineup. These are our birds that are all native to Canada. We have the Carolina wren, an alder flycatcher, the eastern bluebird, and the hermit thrush. They're playing Saturday and Sunday. They're being flown out. You can catch them on the main tree or branch 5 or 2. And if you want to click on the first link for the Carolina wren so you can hear her beautiful singing voice, the YouTube link. Click on the link for the Carolina wren, please. No. The Carolina wren is a relative newcomer to our region, having only started appearing in southern Ontario in the last 30 years or so. As suggested by its name, this has historically been a bird in the southeast U.S. of Mexico. Just the next link. Alder flycatcher is very similar to the willow flycatcher, as they look exactly alike and have overlapping ranges. The main way to tell these birds apart are from their songs, stubbornness, and housekeeping habits. To the next link.
This is how
You're about to hear the eastern bluebird singing. This is one of eastern Canada's most colorful species of birds. The bluebird songs are raspy flute, like a mix of warble and a whistle, similar to a robin song but shorter phrases and more chattering. Okay. And just some ground rules for the festival. Respect the space. Obviously, we're visiting. Be one with nature. No single-use plastics. Bring your own water bottles. No phones. And yeah, that's everything. Thank you.
So hi, everyone. Yeah, that's working. So hi, everyone. My name is Sarah, pronounced she, her, and I'm doing my project on a neurodivergent friendly theater space, AKA accessible theater. Yay! And I've gotten a lot of my inspiration from the concept of relaxed performances. I'm going to go a little bit into that. Boom. So what is a relaxed performance? A relaxed performance is a performance done in a space where the rules and regulations around theater etiquette, as well as the theater itself, are loosened. And it's meant to accommodate patrons who may be disabled, neurodivergent, elderly, or have children. And it allows the theater-going experience to be more universally accessible and enjoyed by more people who may otherwise deal with barriers to accessing the space. So here are some examples of what relaxed performances can look like. As you can see, we've got sensory-friendly glasses, all the headphones. The bottom space, I think, was more tailored specifically for children. So you can see all of the little instruments and the toys there. So makes it more accessible to families who want to enjoy themselves in a creative and performance-based space. So lighting. Definitely keep the lighting in the space to a lower intensity and maybe employ different sorts of lighting. I will admit that I'm no expert in lighting, but there is a very clear difference between harsh fluorescent lighting and maybe like a bluer light. So that could be something that could be played with. Seating, a wide variety of seats. We would have the harder, more traditional seats for people who need that. Seats that are able to handle various body types, so make that an accessible aspect. Plenty of couches with pillows, beanbag chairs, just making it so everyone can be comfortable. Sound. So sounds in general, even if it's like a minimal shift, we'll keep sounds to a lower volume, and yeah, we have that. And also providing either captioning devices or have a screen for the entire audience to see that provides captions and or subtitles for people who might be deaf, hard of hearing, or have auditory processing issues. And the latter is common with neurodivergent people. I can speak for myself that even when I'm watching something in a language that I understand, my brain gets the words right away, but then the meaning is like half a second behind. So having subtitles kind of shortens that space. Flooring. My first impulse is to just have foam, because foam is nice. If not, I was thinking not quite blankets, even though that's what I have, or like some sort of sensory-friendly sheets or material to cover the floor, just so if that's what you're more comfortable with, or you have children who just want to be free on the floor, that they're comfortable. And make sure to have as many clear aisles as necessary to accommodate people who need more room due to mobility aids, or just people who need to move around a lot. If you fidget, if sitting for too long gets uncomfortable, if you have kids who won't sit still, just have all of that available. Overstimulation kits. So in a previous iteration of this project, I had created these little kits for actors who are neurodivergent specifically and who might need, in case of the overstimulation in general. And it had a lot of different access tools within a little backpack. And I would have one available on every seat, and the ushers will have tons of extras on hand, so we're fully stocked. And just a few miscellaneous things. It would be really awesome if the theater space could be like soundproofed with like some sort of sound treatment, so outside noises don't come through and make that a distraction. And the use of fog machines or really any kind of smoke can be kept to a minimum or just removed entirely. And that's the bibliography, and that is it. Thank you.
Well, hello, my name is Leah. The project that I decided to do is kind of the conceptualization of a music album into a theatrical festival that takes place outside. Excuse me, I am a little bit sick, so I might have to cough. So the album is called The Horror in the Wild by the band called The Amazing Devil. So The Amazing Devil is a British folk alternative band that was formed by two actors who were working on Broadway together, Joey Beatty and Madeline Hyland. If you recognize Joey Beatty, it's because he was in the TV series The Witcher. Yeah, he played Jaskier in The Witcher. Here's some little pictures. So they haven't done a lot of live shows because it was more of a conceptualization for them, and they made music very like for their personal enjoyment. But they have released 3 albums as of yet. Since they met in 2014, they released their first album, Love Run, in 2016. Their second album, Horror in the Wild, in 2020, which is what this project is based on. And then their most recent album, Ruin. So all of their albums have like a really interesting, like interwoven storylines, storytelling, kind of like how folk music is, but like very specific storytelling, and a lot of lyrics that have ties to nature and natural settings, and using like natural metaphors to talk about love, to talk about growing up, to talk about breakups and things like this. So here's the entire like songs of the album with some of their lyrics, but I'm not going to read them all out. That was more just for my own benefit. So I wanted to conceptualize this album into a series of outdoor live shows that take place in historical and natural environments within the UK. Because I feel like a lot of live shows and live music are performed either indoors or on music venues that are mostly just like flat ground that get trampled by the spectators. So I wanted to kind of create a certain dimension with these natural environments and have these environments inform the performance's aesthetic as well as content. Can I actually play the video right now, please? So I'm just going to show you guys quickly what they do, because they already have a style of performance that is very similar to what I want to do, but on a smaller scale. So I just want to blow up this scale much larger. So here you go.
With you I could summon the gods and the stars, watch them dance out the plays that we wrote from the heart. We'd laugh at the ghosts of our fears. We were kids. Come at me, you blackguards, you'd yell from the banks, wielding words against make-believe wizards and tanks. And by God, love, believe me, I wanted to play too, I did. But we sunk into water, no creature can know. You dragged us both into the darkness that grows. Our devils broke rank, and out of the depths came an army. I won't let you turn our last night into this. Gonna binge watch a box set, drink wine, reminisce. This isn't a breakup, dear heart, it's a season finale. Cause these plates, they smash like when you're smiling, and the wine stains hide the tears. They hide the...
Thank you. So as you guys can see, this is one of the shows that they did that showcased their 3 songs from their album, The Horror in the Wild. And so it's a smaller scale of kind of what I want to blow up and bring on tour, basically. They used a lot of natural things to like make their stage. So I thought that was interesting, and I wanted to bring it outward. So in 90% of their songs on this album, there is like natural sounds, waves, birdsong, wind sound that is integrated into the recordings of their music. And so I wanted to have this sound, but in real life, and to have the feeling of being outside, have the weather inform the performance as well, to kind of bring the album to reality. So some of the locations that I looked into in the UK that I thought would be interesting to kind of have as tour locations are Durdles Door in England, the Giant's Causeway in Ireland, and Malham Cove. So all of these locations have the kind of backdrop that allows for sound to reverberate towards the audience again. Imagine the audience is near the ocean. Yeah. And then here are 2 that kind of contextually inform the performance, with the falls having a lot of sound, sound addition, and the lake in Scotland again reverberating sound. So because it's going to be something that is musical and theatrical, I wanted to integrate dancers, character dancers wearing these kinds of different outfits, like kind of historical, kind of mythic, really bring like the mythology and the history of the UK into the performance. That's it. Thank you. Okay, I'm ready. Thank you.
Hi. Oh, is this the right spot for the microphone? Okay, great, thank you. My name is Lauren, and today I will be talking about Currents, which is a biomusic collaboration that I would like to make. Oh. There we go. Okay, so what is biomusic? Biomusic is, hold on. Biomusic is an experimental music genre centered around sounds that are produced by non-human entities. This can include simple things like we've discussed already, like birdsong, wave sounds, kind of the more obvious ones. But it's also a really large field that can include a lot more experimental things. So I want to show you a couple examples. So the first example I want to talk about is an album by the Tribes of Neurot called Adaptation and Survival, the Insect Project. It's an experimental American band formed in 1995. The Insect Project is a multi-directional sound experiment dedicated to and inspired by insects. All the sounds are originally produced by the insects and have been manipulated using a synthesizer to create a psychedelic insight into the strange and bizarre world. If it's possible to skip like about a minute in this video, it just sounds a bit better. I'm not sure how to exit it on here. Or return to the PowerPoint, to the Prezi if possible. Great, thank you. The second example I wanted to show you is called Music from the Body. Biomusic is commonly associated with sounds produced by non-human scores, but it also encompasses sounds generated by human body parts. It's basically anything a sound that can be made from the human body, not including your voice box. So in 1970, there was a documentary called The Body. It was released with a soundtrack composed by Pink Floyd's Roger Waters and a composer, Ron Geeson. The soundtrack, titled Music from the Body, includes noises such as coughs, farts, gurgling stomachs, and more. And they're more like interspersed in May pause So the last example I want to show you, just to get a good range of things, is a work of art by Bartholomäus Trabak, a German music artist that invented a machine that you can take slices of the ring of a tree and play it as a record. The machine uses sensors to detect details about the color and texture of the wood, and then an algorithm turns these into piano notes so that they sound pretty. The unique characteristics of each tree results in a different song for each tree or each like section that is cut off. watching this, I wonder how like trees versus bigger trees sound. You may pause the video now. So, bringing it back to human involvement, another thing I want to talk about is something called neurofeedback, deeply fascinating to me. In the 1960s, the electrocephalophone was created, which literally means brain instrument. This machine takes your brain waves and turns them into sound, similar to how an EEG machine works. On its own, the electrocephalophone creates like a synth kind of hospital machine sound. Different artists have developed softwares now to take and modify the sound so it can sound like a trumpet or a guitar or whatever you want it to sound like. For example, there's also a local Montreal artist called Maxime Michaud, who composes music using his own brainwaves. And he's discovered that when like he is meditating, the music that is created from his brainwaves is a lot slower and more calm, whereas when he's like thinking about something stressful or exciting, then it's more rapid melodies that are going on, which I think is really fascinating. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of the possibilities of neurofeedback and biomusic. So I'm going to show you this video. If you could please skip to 55 seconds, that would be helpful.
I'm like, what? I'm just like setting up a rhythm, and then it's like all of a sudden it's like doubling. Yeah.
I was trying some halftime recording. That's my bad.
What about if you had is there a trumpet sound? So you have the
There's a
digital
trumpet sound.
and then the acoustic trumpet.
Yeah, it would be kind of cool. Let's try it.
Sure. Yeah, give it a shot.
We can completely change the sound envelope of the tone, so it sounds more like a human instrument.
I realized I had a lot of videos and it made my presentation a bit too long. But as you can see in that video, that was an example of taking the machine and changing what instrument it was. That was also an interesting one because they're kind of all like live jamming together while his brainwave music comes out. Like the instruments are just kind of improvising with him, which I think is really lovely. So there's tons of different ways to make biomusic, and the possibilities are kind of endless. So this got me thinking, let's start a band. I'm really excited about this concept. It got me thinking that nature, plants, animals, humans, we all have rhythms and currents of energy through us that can be translated out loud now with the help of technology. So what if these sounds could listen to each other and work together? And I was kind of thinking about how musicians often, when they're making a new song, they'll like collaborate and they'll like send demos back and forth. Like a musician will be like, oh, I created this bass line for you, what do you think? And then like the lyricist or whatever would, write lyrics based on their music and send it back, and that kind of back and forth exchange is usually how some musicians collaborate. So I thought, could ecological entities and humans also do the same thing? So, shout out Plantasia by Mort Garson again. That is also a source material that I found very inspiring. So my question is, can I make an album where plants and humans can be in direct response to one another? So my step one is to give the plants something to groove to. And what better than Plantasia, because Plantasia was made specifically for them. It's funny because I was trying to look into the science of how Plantasia was made for plants, and basically the story I found is that Mort Garson, it's basically like a story that he heard from someone where like one plant in one room was listening to classical music and grew really well, some plants in another room were listening to rock music and grew really well, and then a plant in the third room was listening to the news all day and it died, which I just think is interesting. So I think Mort Garson is really adorable because he basically, he also invented the Moog synthesizer, and then he took that and created songs that basically just remind him of the vibe of his house plants around the house. There's one called an ode to a spider plant. So he basically just created like synthesizer sounds and composed music to see like what he thought his plants would enjoy, which I just think is adorable. We already listened to a bit, so I think this. Why don't we go back to the presentation? Okay. But it's honestly such a good listen. It's like 35 minutes. You can do it like, I would recommend listening to it while you like get ready for your day. It's kind of lovely. So that would be step one. It continued is the plan is basically to play Plantasia to a designated area of maple trees. I chose maple trees for the first like rendition of this soundtrack to make it more specific to like Turtle Island and to Canada. So basically the plan is I would play Plantasia to a designated area of maple trees, and then I would record the tree's reaction to Plantasia using what's called contact microphones. You can see in the photo there. Contact microphones record vibrations that are coming through the tree. This is often changed by the wind and kind of sounds like a low rumbling bass line. You can also hear like an interesting clicking sound with these, and that's actually the water that's traveling through the xylem tubes up and down the tree. So it's kind of a mix of like a nice low bass line and then these like clicky noises from the water moving up and down. So in my mind, what I assume is that the tree will act as the chords or the harmony for the piece. I envision, based on the videos that I've watched and things like that, that the sounds coming from the tree will be more steady and more rhythmic, based on just the steadiness of the wind. And yeah, I think it would sound more steady. And I even wonder if I can make plants like harmonize, maybe, if you hook up like a contact microphone to 3 different maple trees that are all different ages. I think that could be interesting as well. So yeah, that is step 1. And then step 2 is where we bring in the human interaction. So now we have kind of like a demo and baseline for the piece. So step 2 is a person will listen to the recording of the maple tree's reaction to Plantasia while hooked up to the electrocephalophone. So the subject's brainwave reaction to the music will be recorded through the machine and then turned into sound using the Moog synthesizer. There is a more modern version now of the Moog synthesizer, so I would choose to use the Mini Moog Model D to kind of stick with the theme of Plantasia as well. So yeah, I'm just curious to know how the brain will react differently to sounds created from maple trees than it does to music we typically enjoy, and that conversation between the tree's music and what the brain creates based off of it as like a completely kind of silent conversation. So then that would leave us with kind of the baseline from the tree, and I would imagine that the human brainwave music would be a bit more sporadic and would have more changes in tone and pitch based on the reactions. So I would imagine that the human brainwave music would act more as like the melody. So I would want to arrange the existing works together in a simple way, just simply like layering one on top of the other. I kind of want this to be with minimal human artistic direction. It's kind of not about what sounds good to the human ears. It's more just about that direct conversation and exchange between the plants and the human brainwaves. So yeah, I just wonder, what would humans think of this song? What would plants think of the song? How would they react? Can trees make harmonies? Does the sound have a natural rhythm? How will it react to Plantasia? Does the human brain feel calmed by these sounds? And what will it all sound like? And there's a lot of future potential with this project as well. This process could be kind of just layered over and over and over. You could take what we now have as just the base, and you could send it back to a different plant and then back to another human, and you could keep adding on. This could also be turned into a longer album. I think would be interesting, where different human and natural entities can be connected in different parts of the world. So you could have like a Canada episode, and then you could have like maybe like the coffee plants in Brazil, and then you could also do like banana plants in the Philippines or something like that. It has the potential to discover how different people and plants react to one another's currents. But for now, you will just have to imagine how it sounds. And that's all. Thank you.
Maybe in? Yes? Okay. So I would like to preface this with the fact that I am not a theater student, and yet I am presenting about a play to an entire class of theater students. So please be kind to me if I, mess up on some terminology or of the such. I will be presenting about probably one of my favorite plays of the few that I've read, which is Waiting for Godot, aka an eternal play for trees by trees. So Waiting for Godot is a tragicomedy consisting of only 2 acts written by Samuel Beckett. It was originally written in French, and then it was also re-released in English with the first performance in 1953. It is a very important play in terms of being very defining for the absurd theater or anti-theater because of its aspect of how it describes like human inevitability and suffering and connection. So there's a lot of it is repetitive. There's a lack of ending. It's continuous, and it also completely rejects all regular conventions and norms of theater, such as characters and resolution, such as characters and plot being consistent, having an actual resolution, and the such. So going with this idea of a play that technically repeats itself and goes on forever and does not necessarily need its coherency, I started going with the idea that I started considering the idea that this absurd theater could be readapted in various different ways. So within the characters of the play, there are only 6 characters. There's Vladimir and Estragon, which are our main characters, which we see throughout the entire play. They meet Pozo and Lucky, which are master and slave. And then at the end of each act, they meet a young boy, who tells them that Godot, the character that they are supposedly waiting for, is not coming. And then the second act starts, and there is a repeat. The most important actor throughout this entire play is the tree, which is the only visible prop on the entire stage throughout all renditions of the play. For the tree, I was considering having our actor be a willow, because in the play itself, they do describe it as being a willow. Specifically, they describe it as being a bush willow. In French, they refer to it as an arbuste or arbrisseau. bush willows native to Canada, assuming that this would be a play that was to take place here, would be the pussy willow or the Beb's willow. Also assuming that they might have mistaken it for a sapling of an actual tree, it could also be a black willow. So what I would consider is, what if this entire play was played out on a much larger scale, in the sense that the stage and the audience would be the home of our main actor, the willow, which is typically a swamp. Willows grow in moist places, so, but between all places where they usually which you usually find them in North America, it is usually around swamps or wetlands. Swamps are a perfect stage setup also, because they're a mostly undisturbed ecosystem in our regions. And in the idea of the play being played in a swamp, we could reiterate it through various actors and various interpretations to a consistent audience, which would be the inhabitants of the swamp, fellow trees, fellow animals, fellow beings inside of the swamp, which would theoretically go on forever and ever. We would start with human actors, which would perform the original play, and then eventually, clearly, they will either retire, grow too old, or die, in which case they would have to be replaced. And then following there, we could change the actors to be anything. They could be songbirds, deer, beavers, otters, bullfrogs, butterflies, toadbugs, beetles, and then even perhaps limestone, sediments, anything that would live within the swamp, anything that the swamp could be able to find itself in. And of course, we would end perhaps even with, like I mentioned, limestone and sediments, things that would outlive a majority of its audience, which would bring back a major theme of the play, which is mortality and kind of, inevitability, like the realization that, absurdism is all about repetitiveness and, kind of like, a cycle of repeat. So here's a little illustration I did of, an ideal, beautiful place where this play could take place. So I took inspiration of local swamps from my neighborhood, in which, in this scenario, our stage would be the general swamp, and then, of course, our actor would be a nicely placed willow that would be willing to participate. And then, of course, within the willow, sorry for these really badly drawn otters, yes, they're otters, hypothetically, our actors would be performing the play. Actors, of course, would iterate through different variations of the play depending on what they are. Of course, this play can go on forever, going on forever and ever. It can take multiple variations and change according to whose experiences are being evoked within the play, and also how this idea of inevitability and absurdism can manifest for that specific creature or entity. Of course, if an actor ever becomes unavailable, considering that the play must go on forever, the performance would go on with the audience by taking the role temporarily that is disabled. If the audience does not know their lines of their role, then the wind will take the role momentarily until there is a replacement that is found. And thus, there is the idea that we would have a play that could take place forever in a place that as long as the swamp would live on. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So mine is the website. I think it's already, yes, okay. All right, so I'm Charlotte. I wanted to
reimagine the first chapters of one of my favorite books. It's called Sapiens. It's a brief history of humankind. And so I kind of imagine the space that it would be taking place in and what the first 5 chapters would look like as a performance. I've never written a script, and I'm a design major, so just take it with a grain of salt. It's like super visual language I use in my script, but it covers from the cognitive revolution to like the start of the agricultural revolution, those chapters. And so the kind of space that I imagined it in, I wanted to use hologram technology to like really transport us into these times and have like the actual faces and bodies of the people who would have lived during this era. So this is a really rough sketch. So I wanted to make this hill of, that's like actually a hill, but then the top is like kind of a flat platform, because with hologram technology, you need to view it kind of at an upwards angle for it to have that optical illusion. And then I was gonna have the orchestra. Here's like I'm sorry, I'm gonna like walk into the camera. I have like a black scrim, which I did write in here, so that when it gets dark, we're gonna load in during sunset, and when it gets dark, the face gets dark. It's gonna create like a flat backdrop front. And then I wanted to do this in front of a mountain, and then have this kind of like mimic the mountain. And so even though it's like I'm using really modern technology to put on this play because it's hologram technology, it still feels very natural. And that's like pretty important to the themes of the play, is like connecting with nature. All right, we can scroll down just to this, to the diagram. A little bit further, if that's okay. Thank you. Okay, so this is the stage. This is the hill that's going to put the audience at an angle. And then here I have projection stands, and then I have lines of torches down each aisle. And yeah, it's the exit and the backstage and the mountain in the background. Okay, we can scroll down to scene 1, please. Should I keep using this mic? Okay. Okay, scene 1 is brothers and sisters. So we start at an ape separating into our brothers, chimpanzees, and us. And we see all 8 species of humans develop simultaneously. And all of these humans developed, including Homo sapiens, to different conditions. Like we all started in East Africa as one species, and then we spread all over Eurasia and became Neanderthals, etc. And so I wanted this first scene to focus on Neanderthals, and we see them discover fire, jump to the top of their food chain, and like live their daily life. And we just kind of see like humans, you know? And then the scene ends with the Neanderthal woman painting this picture in a cave, and that's 66,000 years ago. And then we go to scene 2, please. Thank you. Okay. So then we go to Homo sapiens. That's 10,000 years later, and they look just like us. From the very first time our species developed, we've looked exactly the same. And so we focus on a young woman cave painting, and we see people chiseling spearheads, smoking food, mothers with children, a group of humans discussing what they found in their gathering today, and father advocate moving to an area with better fishing. And so in this, I paraphrased, and I also took direct quotes from this book. So I'm going to read, maybe not this one. Oh yeah, this one. Okay. So humans are intrinsically cooperative animals. We are born underdeveloped and require constant care for nearly a decade to fend for ourselves. Our muscles atrophied because of how big and energy consuming our brains are. So we require large groups and tools to defend ourselves from larger animals. Over time, Homo sapiens, skinnier and less physically adapted to our environment than other species of humans, developed more complex communication and creative thinking. We had a broader scope of imagination than other species, and developed the ability to gossip, holding large amounts of information about other people, so we were able to live in larger groups.
And it's our understanding that only sapiens had the ability to speak about things they hadn't seen, touched, or smelled. Now, this is like extremely speculative because we can't ask any other species how they were thinking. But when we look at battles between like Neanderthals and humans and other groups, we were every single time able to outmaneuver and beat them because we lived in larger groups and we were just more strategic in general. But our DNA 40,000 years ago, after the Neanderthals went extinct, was 10% Neanderthal. So that brings us to scene 3, love. So now we're in Northern Europe, 30,000 years later, and we see a Homo sapien walking a beaten path, picking select plants along the way and putting them in a reindeer skin bag. She walks past a series of coastal cave entrances, and we see Neanderthals cooking, talking, resting, making. She approaches her lover, shelling mussels, and the next scene continues as a nearly modern love story. They walk together and hunt small game. They point out their favorite flowers and speak about their mothers and the places they've grown up. They face criticism from his aunt. She doesn't approve marriages between their two species. Most of the people they know don't mind. He meets a sapien band, and they immediately take a liking to him. They spend long nights around the fire and early mornings in the bush. They aren't monogamous or a nuclear family, and neither is anyone else. All people during this time took care of every child. She grows pregnant, and he helps her with whatever she needs. They grow old in a cave between 2 fishing villages and teach their children the ways of the world. So that's love. We can go to wheat. Okay. This is one of my favorite chapters from the book. It's because of the quote at the very end, "We didn't domesticate wheat, it domesticated us." The word domesticate comes from the Latin word domus, which means house. Who's the one living in the house? Not the wheat, it's the sapiens. And basically, there's wheat, it's really good, it fills you up, so we ate it, we pooped it, then there was a lot more wheat, and then eventually there was so much wheat, and traditionally, like if there's a place with a super abundant food source, we'd settle down. So we'd have like fishing villages and things like that. But we started farming villages for wheat. And so we created permanent settlements around wheat and spent our entire days farming wheat. And so in a couple thousand years, humans all over the world were doing little other than taking care of wheat plants from dawn to dusk. All right, scene 5, please. Forgetting. Okay, a conversation at the dinner table about this year's harvest. The youngest son got sick from malnutrition. The kids play in front of the house as the sun goes down. The mother meets her childhood friend to grind wheat for tonight's dinner. They discuss the lack of rain and how badly their neighbor's farm is doing. They laugh and remember the decades they've spent together. The family spends the next day, like all days, in the field, with the mother inside preparing food, wheat, and caring for the children. There isn't enough to go around. The next night, the mother meets her friend to patch clothes and rinse out grass stains. They discuss a budding romance between 2 of their children, how cute it was. Her eldest daughter comes bursting in. A neighboring group has come to seize their village as the harvest didn't go well either. The mother gathers their children and flees. They watch atop a hill as men fall and run from battle. They see them run into the bush, surrounded by the plants that our lovers were harvesting in scene 3, and crawl into one of those coastal caves that the Neanderthals used to populate. The art that our lovers made is on the wall as they lean on to die of starvation. The play ends with actors dressed in animal skin costumes, fitting of the era of the last scene, walking down the audience aisles and lighting the torches as the house lights coming up. And so, yeah, I don't really know what else to say about that. That's just what I thought would be nice to do for this book that I love. And I think the agricultural revolution was a mistake. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, can you go to the first slide, please? Okay, so I am exploring Canada Day as an event and reimagining it. When I was sort of thinking about ecological entities in Canada, I just kept thinking about Canada itself as an ecological entity and what it means to sort of consider it one and the implications of that. So I want to sort of briefly explore that in this presentation and examine Canada Day as a construct and what that could be. Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, so what actually is Canada Day? So it marks July 1st and really refers to Canada's Confederation, which is in 1867, when sort of the British North American colonies of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and the province of Canada, which is today Ontario and Quebec, sort of formed to form the Dominion of Canada. And sort of after that, then we have the sort of other provinces being formed. But within all of this, I think it's really important to acknowledge Indigenous presence, specifically when considering Canada as an ecological entity, because of the sort of ecological relationship the Indigenous peoples had with this land as the original owners and caretakers of it, and how that relationship was fractured over time. So we have the sort of other provinces coming to existence, but it's really a question of like, what do these borders actually represent and why do they get to sort of be determined in this way? So just for a very brief overview of some like the vast Indigenous communities that have existed over what is sort of considered the Americas today. Within Canada, there's about currently over 1.8 million people who identify as Indigenous, which is 5% of the current Canadian population. So also questioning where that sort of comes from and why that percentage is obviously now so small of the people who occupy this land. So we have Confederation, we have sort of all of these white guys coming together and wanting to make some big changes, obviously. It's really important to acknowledge that Indigenous people were not present at either the Charlottetown or the Quebec Conference, which were the major meetings that determined Canada being founded as a confederation. Sort of after the Confederation, this new government basically implemented the 11 numbered treaties, which were sort of said to be agreements with the Indigenous people, but basically worked to systematically disenfranchise them and sort of give these white guys more and more ownership of the land. And the result is genocide, colonization, oppression, and sort of the assimilation of the various Indigenous peoples into what they determined to be Canada. This painting by Kent Monkman, The Daddies, reinterprets the sort of classic Confederation painting by having Kent Monkman's alter ego, Mischief Eagle Testicle, in the center of it, which imposes Indigenous and queer presence on the Confederation when Indigenous people were not present. What follows is also the Indian Act, which is further of this newly formed government oppressing and disenfranchising the Indigenous communities. The Indian Act denied women status, it created residential schools, it created reserves that forced Indigenous people to live on them, it denied them the right to vote, it denied them the ability to speak their language or practice their religion, and basically, yeah, sort of worked to remove their relationship from the land, which I think is really interesting when considering this an ecological entity. The Canada being an ecological entity that sort of worked as the colonizers were basically removing a lot of the ecological relationships that existed on this land. So then we come to what Canada Day actually is, which obviously comes to sort of celebrate, in quotes, the Confederation. So Canada Day 100 in 1967 was sort of, they went all out, was sort of, oh, sorry, can you just go back? My bad. Yeah, they went all out. So we have the Expo 67 in Montreal, Quebec, a variety of sort of things. You have a massive birthday cake, which Queen Victoria came and cut. She seems very happy about it. You have the construction of the National Arts Centre in Ottawa. I think it's also interesting. You have the Caribou Indian Girls Pipe Band, which is basically a bunch of young Indigenous girls from a residential school who are playing the bagpipes. It's pretty messed up. So then eventually all this continues on. I have to obviously give a very brief overview of all of this, but we arrive at Canada Day 150, in which Heritage Canada budgeted $200 million for this, and the Canadian government added $300 million to that. Parks Canada spent about $76 million to make national parks free for the whole year to anyone, and there was a lot of, obviously, some positivity. I mean, about 87 million people participated in one of the events. You have 50,000 people attending the Walk for Reconciliation in Vancouver, a large percentage visiting national parks and heritage sites. But the question obviously remains of who this day is for, what it's meant to acknowledge. Resistance 150 saw a large amount of protesters protesting and gathering on Parliament Hill, constructing a teepee, and basically protesting against Canada Day, what it represents, what it celebrates. Yeah, just a quote, we talk about the smart and caring nation, but don't acknowledge that those privileges aren't afforded to Indigenous peoples. Moving forward, different Indigenous groups have talked about what it means to actually properly acknowledge this day. The Native Child and Family Services of Toronto is quoted as saying Canada Day is an opportunity for Canadians to get reacquainted with treaty making and Canadians to better understand their obligations as treaty holders. So basically talking about this day being an opportunity to reflect, educate ourselves, not just celebrate, but to actually consider the implications of being on this land as an ecological entity, our relationships with it, protesting, donating, reflecting, really. And they also hosted a sacred fire in 2021 for community healing and wellness for Indigenous and non-Indigenous people to gather together. So my proposal comes as an idea for Canada Day 200 in a more ecological, conscious, self-reflective way to properly sort of move forward. The sort of idea I had was for 13 different meeting grounds or amphitheaters, each located within a national park within each of the provinces and territories around Canada. These would sort of celebrate the artistic music, celebrate Canada through art and performances while also placing a huge emphasis on reflection with Indigenous educators, speakers, and land acknowledgements. And all of these venues would be naturally made from very sustainable and recycled resources that could then be left over time to sort of dissolve or infuse with their environments, and that way could act as reminders and ecological visiting sites for people to visit in the future. There's also the potential that various funds generated from these events through food or donations could actually go to any reserves or Indigenous communities nearby to like properly actually support them. So researching reusable and sustainable theater designs brought me to a couple past examples. There's the London's Jellyfish Theatre in 2010 that used reused shipping pallets, recycled nails, old school furniture, donated wood scraps to construct this sort of temporary auditorium, which is pretty cool. There's the Paper Bale Theatre in 2013. This is actually a proposal for a design for the World Stage Design event. That they wanted to basically propose a theater made of recycled bales of recycled paper, cardboard, alternative scaffoldings constructed from bamboo. This was never actually created, but acted as a proposal for what could be. You also have the Greenhouse Theatre, which was constructed in 2019 using timber framing and wood pallet cladding around a triangular lighting truss skeleton. So all of these were temporary structures that were sort of disassembled and the materials were recycled and reused after. I'm interested in potentially using materials that actually could be left in some way to remain in the environments and be sort of become one with their environments. So thinking of the idea of like an amphitheater, sort of an outdoor large venue, really minimizing the use of like any kinds of unnecessary materials. So really using simple things like dirt and grass, hills, stone, using woods, using very basic materials that are from the environment and can remain with the environment, and that really just sort of allow for a gathering place for people. Sort of this is the Sasquatch Festival that's was held in Washington, which I sort of I think acts as like a great example. My thinking would be obviously less of these kinds of the classic scaffolding and theater design and going for, again, much more of a natural and sustainable, like reused materials, cardboard, bamboo scaffolding, all of these sort of materials that could either be recycled after and remain in the location, bringing people together, allowing for people to actually consciously engage with the land, think about their place on the land, allowing Indigenous and non-Indigenous people to gather together to question, celebrate, self-reflect on our relationships with each other and what it means to take responsibility for this land. Just some different overhead designs that I was thinking of. There's also the possibility for art displays, for art vendors, for information booths, some different locations that I came up with within each of the different sort of provinces and territories. There could be a myriad of speakers and hosts. Two of just my personal favorites are Jeremy Dutcher, who's a sort of amazing Canadian Indigenous musician. He won the Polaris and Juno Awards. I highly recommend checking out his work. And then Thomas King, amazing writer, poet, activist. I really recommend checking out his work if you haven't already. Yeah, and really the purpose of this is a conscious way of engaging with what is now considered Canada, of making us question and think about our place, acknowledging, respecting, appreciating this land, and actually trying to engage in a new form of an ecological relationship with that land that acknowledges its original peoples, acknowledge everyone who occupies this land today, and what we can move forward with. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm Keegan. So can we just go back to the first slide? We're in the middle here. Thank you. Okay, so the proposal for my project is in combination with an artist called Amy Balkin. So in specific, I chose this work called Public Smog. So first I'm gonna just explain what it is and then I'll explain my idea. So Amy Balkin's work, Public Smog, is a conceptual piece that essentially creates a public park, in quotations, because this is a conceptual piece, remember that, a public park in the sky. So, what this public park is an area of clean, unpolluted air within the atmosphere. The work claims that the park fluctuates in size based on the purchasing of carbon offsets and other emission regulating processes. The idea that one must purchase stock in clean air highlights the idea that CO2 is all around us, yet remains totally invisible. So Balkin's work started after she entered the emissions trading market, which is basically a place where companies can go and buy the right to emit. So she purchased the right to emit nitrogen oxide, a greenhouse gas, in Southern California. So this inspired her entire project. But she actually didn't use this right. To pollute, she was essentially creating stewardship over a portion of the atmosphere and making these offsets inaccessible to polluting industries and reserving that portion of the atmosphere as a clean air park for the public. I hope that made sense. So the public smog park was maintained by purchasing offsets, but this ability to support the project was only briefly open in Southern California in 2004 and in the European Union from 2006 to 2007. And then the other branch of this project was to gather awareness and get countries to petition to add the Earth's atmosphere to UNESCO, which is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization's World Heritage List. So what this list is, sorry, can we go to the next slide? Or, sorry, I have control, never mind. So this is the criteria to get onto the UNESCO list. So this is a quote from UNESCO's website. What makes the concept of World Heritage exceptional is its universal application. World Heritage sites belong to all the people of the world, irrespective of the territory on which they are located. So once you're listed under UNESCO as a UNESCO site, this site will gain international recognition as well as legal protection and emergency funding. Yeah. So, and then the other part of this, of Amy's project, was that she had these billboards posted around cities that were trying to call action and attract attention to the project. So the way that I'd like to collaborate with this artwork is in kind of a two-step process. So the first one is by actually just adding a physical element to it, by creating a giant projection of this public smog park over top of a city. So it would basically just resemble, sorry, these, but you'd actually be looking up and seeing it in your city. So I imagine I would want there to be no announcement for this project. You would just see it, and then around the site there would also be a big projection of a QR code that you would scan, which would then direct you to a website where you could donate money to carbon emission offsetting. Yeah. So then the second part is basically a giant canoe, which is also projected over the skies of the cities. However, it is going to be projected at the level, projected sea level rise in, say, 500 years. So right now, sea level rise is approximately 3.4 millimeters per year. So in 500 years, that's about 17 meters. And this varies drastically by place and also by the pace of climate change and how much we change in the future. So it's kind of the same idea for this one, where there would be a QR code and it would direct you to a site where you would be prompted to donate to green energy campaigns, and then depending on how much money was raised, the height of this canoe would change based on very complicated math that I would figure out. Okay, so if we could just play this top video. This is just an example of projection that has been done. This is the Super Bowl in 2020. It's 3D projections. Yeah. And unfortunately, so the company that's doing this is called Blue Media. They're gatekeeping their technology, so I couldn't figure out what they're doing to make this work. It's not this one, sorry, it's from the other slide. And yeah, so the other option would be using drones, which is a bit more lame. So I would rather use one of these. Yeah, these videos. Yeah, it's embedded. Sorry, is it not gonna work? Okay, well, that's fine. Yeah, they're basically, sorry, that's my bad. I thought I put the video in, but they're really cool. Maybe I can figure out a way to play it later. But yeah, they're like 3D projections in the sky. Yeah, that's it. That's my idea.
While we're waiting for another video to get called up, I had a couple of bridging questions. One is I wanted to note, Max, I think you meant Queen Elizabeth II when you said Queen Victoria, just historical epoch. And Keegan, I was wondering if the floating canoe was inspired by the Quebecois folklore of, yeah, just, for those unfamiliar, there's a famous Quebecois folk tale about a floating canoe that was raised by a bunch of lumberjacks who called upon the spirit of the devil. So not conceptually irrelevant, I don't think. It's, I think, a very, very solid connection. And of course, the canoe's relationship to indigenous culture is very, so both Quebecois and indigenous in that one gesture, even unintentionally, very nice. So, go ahead.
Can I see my PowerPoint first, please? Yeah. Hello, I'm Violet, and my project is basically to aware people of pets overpopulation issue through an adaptation of the musical Funny Girl, because it's my favorite. And yeah, why not? It fits with cats, I felt. Yeah. So I'm going to start off with my research and then talk about the project specifically. So for my research, I found out that a lot of pets are stray and abandoned every year. 3.4 are cats and 4.2 are dogs. And the most common causes are like lack of money, especially right now because of inflation, lack of time from owners. And some people don't neuter their pets and keep them, like they are allowed to go outside still, and that is a problem because they can reproduce very quickly. And some dogs and cats have, well, it's more rare, but they have more aggressive or unbearable behaviors. The main problems with overpopulation
is it harms the environment, it harms human health, and there's also the problem of defecation everywhere. Accidents can be caused by just like, for example, a dog running in the streets and someone getting hurt because of that. And we still have an issue with, well, no, I feel like there's ethics that are applied that are good, but we still have to kill animals in order to like make the situation better. So it's negative at some point. So yeah, for more research, so for cats, they contribute to the extinction of various bird species and vertebrates. There's also like a very high reproductivity capacity. You can see an example with the image over here. And for dogs, there's a lot of dogs dying from starvation, thirst. I don't know why I wrote defecation, but I meant diseases that can be transmitted through food and then, yeah, consumed by humans in some ways or another. Okay, so there are multiple ways to help. So there's spray and neuter, adopt from the SPCA, microchip your pet, so you can locate them and eventually bring them back to their owners, because one of the main problems is that people don't come and get their animals. So there's also educating people, don't purchase from breeders. I know like puppies are lovely, but preferably you should adopt pets that are already living. And donate and support your nonprofit organization that support animal welfare, and report your strays in your neighborhood. Okay, so for the project itself, it's based off of the musical Funny Girl. I don't know if many of you are familiar with it. But yeah, basically this is the synopsis. And it's a love story and also a story of like an artist growing her career, being underestimated at her beginnings and actually really succeeding. So you can read it if you want. I'm gonna skip through it. And then for my concepts, I called it furry girls. Could be pals, could be gals, I don't know. I would find a gender neutral ideally. And yeah, I'm not a very poetic person, so here's a little synopsis of this story. And basically it would be a cat called Fanny, which is the main character, who would help alley cats and dogs that are strays find families, and through a nonprofit organization, people that they encounter at some point in the story. So for this set design, I was thinking, for like humans dressed as cats that you could do, and maybe used for makeup, like recycled, materials that you can, like grass or like dirt, clay, to make colors and just to make it really realistic and sustainable. Could be set in an actual alley outside, or it could be on a stage with used materials, with dumpsters, trash bags that you find and clean beforehand. And then, yeah, we could include also real cats and dogs. And I was thinking that they could be just running around, and they would be neutered and sprayed already, because they would be pets from ideally the SPCA or places like that. So yeah, for just like main characters, if you're not familiar with it, you're not gonna really get it, but for Fanny, yeah, it's the main cat. Then for Eddie, which is the best friend, I was
thinking it's the community of strays. Then for Ziegfeld, who's the character who helps Fanny become famous and puts her on a stage, I was thinking of making a parallel with nonprofit people and vets that are willing to give their services for free. And then Arstine is her love interest, but I was thinking it could be the message of love and awareness, and also show some aspect of human cruelty. So yeah, there would be themes of mistreatment, euthanization, examples of good and bad owners, like maybe like a dog that was adopted from a breeder and still got abandoned, even though like his owners shopped for him basically for 2 years and waited on a waiting list and things, because it happens. Reproduction and overpopulation, I could make it into jokes that you'll see later when I wrote a lyric. And then, yeah, hunger and thirst. Puppy mills is also an issue. There are basically puppy factories, and it just creates more babies, and we already have too many pets on the earth. And yeah, the goal would be to spread social awareness and justice. For the music, I was thinking of just keeping the same soundtracks as in Funny Girl, but just switching the lyrics up a little bit. So yeah, just make the pet feel relatable through singing and music. Fanny's singing would be promoting the cause to help everyone find families and shelter and things like that. And yeah, we could include real sounds of meowing, and if there are pets around and dogs, there will be anyhow, so that's good. Can you show me the video, please? So for people who haven't seen, you'll see the song that I worked on. I think. Not sure it's...
You can get lonesome being that free.
You can get lonesome being that busy.
I think we can go up to...
Now, who would think to look at us that we got the same problem? We travel single, oh.
The video is just to show the vibe, and also it's always located in the alley because she comes from New York, Henry Street, so it just fits.
Children.
And go back to the PowerPoint. So on the left, there are some lyrics from the actual song, and then I wrote some lyrics afterwards. So you can read it. I'm kind of embarrassed, but it's funny. And I have another page. And basically, for the spreading of this play that could be played everywhere in the world, I was thinking that the part of the ticket money could go to animal welfare organizations and nonprofits. And then, yeah, I was world tours, and there's specifically like overpopulated countries such as China, Asia, and Brazil. There's a lot of a big stray population over there, and so they would be the main focus, I think, to sensibilize people. And I think it would be great if you could adopt any cat or dog that's in the theater at that time or the place of performance. So that's what I was saying. And here's my presentation. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Iris, and my project is a sanctuary for listening, and it's called Silent Voices. It's not working. Yeah, okay, thanks. So I decided to collaborate with some studies on plant bioacoustics led by Monica Gagliano. She is an evolutionary ecologist who started working with animals, but well, she focused in animal behavior, but then she switched to studying plants because she was sorry for the animals that she was studying. But she kept studying the interaction between organisms. And she started with this question: how do plants interact? And can you scroll down, please? So what they knew when they started to investigate is that plant interaction, it's going through three main channels. One, it's light, so they can know when there is light, when there is shadow. They can also know chemicals around them. They also produce chemicals, and they can perceive touch and protect themselves from touch with spikes, for example. The other thing they knew was that plants can be good or bad neighbors. Then that means that plants can compete with other species, not allowing them to grow, and then can also promote growth in other plants. So knowing these two main things, Gagliano asked herself, what will happen if we prevent interaction through these channels? And if we put a plant aside of a good and a bad neighbor. So the next slide, please. They made two experiments. The first one was with chili seeds. And basically, they made two matryoshka boxes where they put in the middle the good companion, which was the basil, and a bad companion in the other matryoshka box, which is the fennel. Around this, through two neighbors, they put the chili seeds, and they observed what will happen. So the result was that even though the seeds didn't receive the shade of the plants placed in the center, nor could they smell them, nor were they in tactile contact, they grew in the presence of basil, and they practically didn't in fennel's presence. So they were wondering, how do chili seeds know that who was aside them? Can you go to the next slide? So as Monica Gagliano said before, she was studying animals, and in animal behavior, it's really common, the sound channel. So she said maybe they are listening, their neighbors. So for that, they made a second experiment with corn seeds. So they stimulate the roots with a sound source in different frequencies. And they measured this with a laser Doppler vibrometer. This is just to know if they will emit some sound. And the other measurement was just seeing if the roots will react to the sound source. And the result was that the tips of the roots began to point towards the sound source. And it was, they were having a preference between the 100 and 300 hertz. And they emit their own sound, which was the most shocking discovery, because we thought that plants will sound because we are aware about the synthesizers and everyone is connecting synthesizers to plants, but actually it's not their sound. And their sound, they sound from their roots, and it's really like a lower sound. And that could be audible for us if we will put our ears under the soil, or just to have the time to wait and rest. So can you go to the next slide? So Monica Gagliano is saying that we will hear them, like the root trees, if we will have the time to put our ears on the ground and be super quiet and wait. So based on this, can you go to the... I decided to do a sanctuary to listen to trees, shrubs, and smaller plants' roots. And how I will do this is installing underground pipes with perforations so that the roots can eventually grow into the tube, and in this same tube can carry their sound to the outside world. Can you go to the next? And so in this part that is facing outward, we'll carry the sound to a resonance panel that will be made out of wood, and which will naturally amplify the sounds coming out from the pipes. So here, thanks. So here I have like a visitor laying down and listening the sound from the plants. And as you can see, this is a kind of long-term project because the pipes will be installed before the trees are grown. And this will be not only from trees, so we could listen smaller plants at the beginning of the project. Can you scroll down, please? As I'm showing here. Can you scroll down, please? And for those people that can't lie down on the grass, I thought in an underground path, which will be called 6 years under. And it's basically a path underground with walls. So the pipes will come out from the walls, and they will be placed in different heights. So people passing through could leaning towards the wall and listening to the sound from the pipes. Something I didn't mention, and because it was not in the research I found, is that our human voice, the spoken human voice, it's in the range that trees like the most. We speak in between 100 and 300 hertz. So I think, because I was wondering how this will benefit the trees, maybe this can be also kind of headphones for trees that can communicate the inside world with the outside world. And yeah, it's my project. And this is a quote I took from an article made by Gagliano. And it's from an excerpt from Wanderings by Hermann Hesse. Trees are sanctuaries. whoever knows how to speak to them, whoever knows how to listen to them, can learn the truth. They don't preach learning and precepts. They preach, untethered by particulars, the ancient law of life. Thanks. That was my presentation.
Thank you guys so much. Awesome. That was fabulous projects. Let's everybody give another, yeah. Art happened. Woo. So now we're going to take a couple of minutes to just kind of chat amongst ourselves. I'm sure Fourth Space people will alert us if anybody hops in via Zoom or has chats or opinions. But I wanted to start with a few kind of questions or prompts for us as a group. And one of the first things that I think we can see as part of these projects is we had quite a few concerts with non-human entities and a few different approaches to what it means to make a concert or a festival with a plant, a mycelium, or an animal. And I'm wondering what came up, what folks thought about those multiple different approaches to working musically with other beings. Like either if you put something forward and you saw other people's presentations and you were like, oh, or if you did something else and you saw those come together. Keegan, if you could just pass the mic to whoever.
Yes, I just thought it was interesting that we both found Plantasia, and your presentation was first, so can you just remind me again, you had the plants like listening, can you remind me just loosely, like the differences between our projects?
Yeah, so I wanted to create a space that basically has like, moss, mushroom, indoor trees where you could hook up.
Right, it was playing like directly from the plant.
Just playing basically through them and playing like the funny sounds. I had a video I wanted to play, but it wasn't working, and it like shows the sounds, but kind of.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how we had the same source material and like took it in different ways, like with mine playing it for the plants, and with yours like playing from them directly. Yeah, just like the difference between like what's like how can a plant react versus what does it just sound like on its own. And I've seen like those videos, I'm sure you have as well, of like the guy that like hooks up his amp to the mushroom, and then like it's so interesting. So yeah, I'd love to like hear what that sounds like.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, thought it was really liked your project.
Same here, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Oh, I might have lost it. Oh wait. Yeah. I had. It was so interesting, but I'm just wondering because whenever they were playing as a band or whatever, it's always on note. Like it's always like the right pitch, and so I'm just wondering, like, do you think they're like trying to? Maybe they have a sound bank that they.
Yeah, which video are you referring to? Like the one with the
not that one, the other one before, I think. Just the band. Oh wait, no, I think it's the band.
Was it with the guy hooked up to the machine?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I went down many rabbit holes of research and technology that I don't really understand, but I was trying to grasp, and like basically what I understand from the electrocephalophone is like on its own it would just sound like a hospital machine kind of vibe, like a not very pleasant, like that's the easiest sound to translate out loud. It's like kind of like a synthesizer, simple buzzing noise. And then musicians have since like taken technology to be able to change it to sound like different instruments. Yeah, it's so interesting to me.
Nice.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to look into that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think building off that, there's something about like the aspect of performance, which is like being in the moment and being present. And I think there's definitely a connection with like the desire to connect with nature in some way, and with performance, it involves being very present and like as things are happening in the moment, both with sort of filtering plant sounds with what Iris's presentation was talking about too. It revolves like a certain aspect of like, yeah, engaging in the moment and being like having a very direct relationship. And I think that seems to be a desire that it seems very common, and that seems to be coming up with like humans and the desire to connect. So yeah, and I guess performance really relies on that aspect of like watching things unfold in real time and being in the moment.
I'm a pretty outspoken person for the fact that art for humans is not a luxury, but it's a necessity. And that like art is, it's just something humans have always intrinsically done. And so to see so many examples of like music and stuff being made directly from like nature and like I mean tree rings as records, that is mind blowing and extremely validating.
So I was also noticing that there is a lot of attempts to grapple with the various legacies of colonialism in a lot of your approaches as well. We had like very overt approach with Max, which was like acknowledging the way in which Canada itself is a colonial entity, but then there was a lot of the ways in which non-human entities are managed or have been altered or their habitats compromised because of the legacy of colonialism. And I'm wondering, especially after watching all of your peers' work, if anyone had further thoughts on either your own work's relationship to the legacy of colonialism or kind of new thoughts or themes that emerged for you after seeing your peers' work.
Well, mine, this book really talks about the history of our urge to dominate everything from the very beginning to now. And so that's very colonial of us forever. And then I really appreciated your, like, I feel like I showed the beginning and then you showed the future. Yeah, so I really liked the way that that linked up for me.
Okay. I actually want to tie a lot of this stuff back to the exhibit at the McCord Stewart Museum that I went to go and see. And I've always been a proponent of the land back movement because duh. But then after seeing the exhibit, I was like, land back now. We are out of our depth and kidding ourselves if we think we can do anything against what climate change has in store for us. And like to just see that Indigenous peoples, like they had access to, like they had their own science. And it's not their own specific science, but it's like they were just so attuned to nature and their surroundings, and all the tools they made for themselves were they were done very simply, some of them. In the, for example, one of the ones that caught my eye were basically visors to protect their eyes from the sun when they're out hunting, because of the reflection of the sun off the snow. And it was just made out of, if I remember correctly, Oh boy. It was a horn. I think it was an ox horn, and just very, very simply done. Not a million aspects to it, but it got the job done. So all this rambling to say, like, there is something to be said about taking colonialism to task about the damage that's been done and actively trying to repair it.
In this book, it talks about the time where we were all hunter-gatherers. There's like this sweet spot between the cognitive revolution, where we're just as smart as we are now, and the agricultural revolution. And our brains were bigger, like we were smarter because we had to carry so much information.
Yeah.
And we rarely ever settled down. We just traveled to where food was abundant. Our bodies were healthier because we were having like such a varied diet. We were just like, and we lived like that for like, I mean, before the cognitive revolution, like there's a species of humans that lasted like 2 million years. So I just don't think the way we live right now is like sustainable or natural.
Oh, it's not.
No.
If I could add one last quick thing, just because I was thinking about it during Charlotte's presentation. The whole thing about nomad versus sedentary, that's the word. There were many mentions in the exhibit that I went to see of how Indigenous people described nature as their home, like all of nature, because they were always moving and always interacting with aspects of nature. And then like, you can obviously see like the decline in general in the human population when we all started to become more sedentary and then settling down and then just
Just something I was thinking about in relation to this question was Iris's project. I really enjoyed just your whole concept of only like of listening, laying down, and I can picture laying down in that nice little enclosure and listening to the roots grow at their own natural speed feels to me a bit like anti-capitalist, anti-colonial. It's just like we're not trying to curate something specifically, like usually because humans are impatient, we'd be like, oh, like play it at 10 times the speed so I can actually like listen to it and get on with my day. So I appreciate that your project is just having to take the time to lay down and listen to the natural world underneath you and the thoughts that can come up. And like I would love to just lay there and like meditate. That'd be great. Yeah, I appreciate that aspect of your project.
It was about, sorry, the original question was about colonialism, right? Sorry, I kind of. No, it was, sorry, I just forgot my, I was listening to people talking, I forgot my idea. I think I was thinking about it in the context of like my presentation also, because even when, you know, my original idea was kind of to separate as much as, like, you know, start with something that was human and then separate from it entirely with time by just secluding it to like something that's completely natural, right? So, you know, like a complete natural environment and complete, you know, non-human actors, and this idea of like, you know, a form of art that could just be completely separated from humans, right, as a whole. And even then, through the research, you know, what was going through my mind was that even in the idea of like creating this, you know, this like, you know, theoretical eternal play, there's no real way of knowing how that's going to turn out, or how that could actually work, because a lot of like the data and a lot of the information, you know, when I research like on wetlands, on swamps and stuff like that, because everywhere that, you know, man goes, you know, we become so intertwined and so like imposing on every place that we go to, right, that we make usage of. It's like even all of the data, right, that I can find on wetlands and on swamps and stuff is mostly through, human sustainability of it. Without that human interaction, without that human contact, there's no real research on how it's been maintained on its own, right? And I realized that while looking for sources and stuff like that, because and the idea that it would go on eternally, that it would go through this concept of eternity separated from us felt almost like impossible to actually like include properly in the idea of my project, just because there's like this uncertainty of like, because we've only known the world completely entranced with ourselves, right, and with our impact on it, there's no real way of knowing how it would actually evolve without it, right? So I thought like that was kind of something that like I guess relates to colonialism also, because that's just how it is part of colonialism mostly, right? And this idea of like, maintaining like something that's natural, that's not ours, right? And like the idea that we must maintain it, we must like take an active part in it, and that's the only reason why we really care about it in the first place, because that's the only statistics that I could find about it, that's the only information I could find about it. Yeah, that's something that I found kind of interesting in my research.
I think the question of like what kind of research would a swamp produce is a really interesting question. Like how do you peer review a swamp, right? Or like how do you make the findings of a swamp visible to humans without like a human researcher leading the thing, right? Like I feel like that's a really fascinating question.
Right, without the human arrangement to it, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a change that happens inherently if some human comes in and like makes an active, involvement in it, right? Without that involvement, how do we really understand any of it, right?
Right, and we already know from quantum physics that the act of being observed already changes the thing that's being observed, right? So it's a really fascinating kind of catch-22 of a question.
Right.
I was wondering if you guys had questions for each other based on what you've just seen. So this could be whether your projects were related or not. It could just be like follow-up questions that you had for the individual related projects. I think Charlotte has one, if you could pass the mic.
I just wanted to ask Sarah, because I put fog and haze into like every single show.
Yeah.
Why is it a negative experience for you?
Okay, so it's not, me personally, I don't have any problems with like fog and haze, but like, it can be a pretty overwhelming just like presence. And I mean, if it gets like projected too far into the room, I mean, I could see people with like sensory issues or just get overwhelmed with like fog. I don't see fog or haze in like productions as necessarily a bad thing. It's just an element to consider how to make it as safe as possible. Like for example, on Proof Rock, we had the fog machines going, but they stayed pretty in the back. I don't think a lot of it actually got into the audience. So like that's an example, I think, of kind of how to do it in an accessible way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my friend, you guys know Marty?
Yes.
She's allergic to corn.
Yes.
And so sometimes in theater shows, like in haze, and because it's oil.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes there's corn in it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so they're like inhaling corn.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
No problem.
And just for context, Proof Rock is the Till Human Voices Wake Us show that went up with the theater department last semester. Other question? Also Proof Rock for short, based on a poem by Alfred J. Proof Rock. Other questions that you have for each other as a group? No? Okay. Then maybe if we could just end by passing the mic around the room. and saying one thing that you will be thinking about in the future, either because of your work in this course or because of the presentations today. This could be as small as like one thing that you want to carry into your artistic practice. It could be a concept that you're going to be letting your subconscious chew on for a while, or it could be a literal project that you think will be informed by what you've been exploring in the class. Does that make sense? Okay. Do you want to start us off, Charlotte, since you've got the mic, or do you want to wait? Okay. Keegan's ready? Keegan's ready.
Okay, so I think something that I've been thinking about a lot since some of the readings that we did is just the concept. I think something I've realized is one of the most sustainable ways to go about the creation process is to be flexible in your idea. And I think that's something that I struggle with, and I know a lot of other people do, like being a perfectionist and having like this perfectly formed idea that you need to execute. But yeah, I think like a project can take on a whole other beautiful light if you are flexible with your vision, and it can also be a lot more environmentally friendly and take on new meaning. Yeah.
It's two things. One is definitely accessibility. I've had to think about it a lot over especially the last two projects, but also just understanding that designing something doesn't have to be overly complicated. Yep, simple can almost be better sometimes.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I think I was just thinking right now specifically just about how using nature and using just the things you have around you can be like a decolonial act. And just how, yeah, involving nature in your practice, that even if it doesn't seem like it's possible. And yeah, just learning a lot about accessibility and sustainability, obviously, and how you can bring that on to like even like a movie set, because I'm a film major, and how to, I don't know, just kind of consider that in everything you do.
For me, before that class, I never really thought about, well, when I was thinking of ecology in theater, it was more about the material you were using, like the physical one, but it's also the ideas. And I was just glad to learn that even though it can be super subtle, but there can still be a higher purpose to a performance, even if it's made for, I don't know, it's just like a blasé audience. You can still make it into something constructive, and that's inspiring, and y'all are inspiring.
Okay, sure. Yeah, two things. One is just appreciating nature as a collaborator, I guess, again, because I think before this class I was getting very caught up in like the solo genius artist thing, and just like not feeling inspired by adapting like other materials, like existing work. And this is kind of taking me back to just what's around me and how that can inspire me instead, which is nice to return to. And I think a lot about the presentation with the person doing the more sustainable practices in the, what are they called? The vinyl letterings, like outside the museums. I forget the name for the actual. Yes, but the plaques, the name of what they're, y'all know what I'm talking about. But I'm thinking specifically about how she said that by creating those, they were like by not having the vinyl, they were able to hire people using the money that the vinyl would have costed to make a more sustainable and meaningful practice. So that just got me thinking about like all the opportunities and avenues where like things that cost a lot of money that could give people jobs instead to have a more sustainable practice. I think that's just something I'm chewing on still.
I'm I'm an art history major, so I'm really interested in now thinking about art and its relation to sensorial capacities within, but also the way in which, because I'm going to be, in my thesis, I'm looking at like digital art, but the way that like the materials interact and like create something, like even looking at something like AI and seeing all that's behind it and like the people who are actually there creating it and being exploited to make it and like how everything kind of works together and yeah, getting to the root of things.
Well, I've taken, Mo had a class last semester.
I did.
Which is very similar to this class, but different prompts and subject matter. It's called materiality, but like the structure is the same. And like after taking that class, thinking about materials is just so, in that way, deep way, is so obvious to me. It's like, duh, I should have been doing that this entire time. And I don't really feel like I feel like I didn't learn anything new. It's just something I already should have known. That's kind of how I feel about thinking about the ecologies. It's like, it's so important to be thinking about this stuff anyways. So it's not like an extra bit of knowledge. It's like a really fundamental part of design. And so taking these classes has really like shaped my, the way I approach design. And I like really thinking about these complicated systems and ideas and thoughts and creating like a really complicated image and then paring it down to what's essential. And then that's made me a lot more satisfied like with my work and my end product. I think it's made my process more thoughtful, so.
Yeah, I'll go next. I kind of second that statement. I think it just, through these classes, I've really learned to just like take a step back and kind of reevaluate myself and how I approach the practices, my artistic practices. And I mean, especially kind of, I've recently like moved into a new place and it just, I have the room now, but just in my practices, if I keep creating these like artworks and sets for films and stuff, it's just like, where is this all going to end up eventually? Eventually I'm going to run out of room, and it's just thinking about different ways to approach that. And I wasn't aware of like facilities like Sucker until taking this class, and I think that those are really great resources just to reanimate those materials that would just go into the garbage. Yeah, just thinking of different ways to approach my art practice that's more sustainable and that, you know, is more decolonial, and just, yeah, just really, really thinking about it. I think that's really valuable and will kind of further shape all my work in the future.
It's my turn. Yeah, I think now I'm questioning myself how to be a support for other organisms. I think that is the main the main subject. Now I'm like, okay, when I'm researching, it's important as well. I'm thinking how can I be a support? And that is something that I was not thinking before. Yeah.
For me, honestly, I think this class was very necessary. I think, like, I'm in computation arts, and it made me think of how, like, I wish there was a class like this for us as well, like within my program itself, because I think this is something that doesn't get like talked a lot, especially in, like, you know, for me in computation arts, you know, it's much more like centered on, like, you know, ourselves and the idea of, like, you know, it's because it's very technical, because it's more on the technological side, especially. There's a lot of like the focus of like man and machine, but there's not a lot of focus on anything outside of that, right? And I've always had an interest in, you know, more like physical installations and stuff like that. That's something that I really want to go into. And I never really stopped and thought about the context of, you know, what, like how it would present like an installation, let's say, or like something external, you know, even like, you know, a contraption or whatever that would be not just for ourselves, but for something beyond us, right? For something that's greater than just, like, you know, humanity, and for something else to be an audience than just ourselves, right? And I think that's something that needs to be considered no matter what like art field you're into if you go into like anything that can contribute, I guess, in a way to this like external interaction with, you know, with the world, with anything outside of ourselves. And I think that's something that was like definitely I took out of this class was like more like this like introspection in how I view my idea of like art and kind of going outside of that bubble in like seeing it on a like way bigger scale and like including much else inside of it, right?
I think I learned in this class, like, it's a class about selflessness. You know, it's very, like, it's kind of coming out of the individual and kind of opening ourselves up to not just humanity, because humanity is super selfish, but opening it up to organisms and ecological entities. And I think that as artists in general, we do need to think more selflessly about the art that we create, because a lot of art is about self and not about like the perspective of another creature, another, or just the earth in general. And I think that having sustainable practices and like implementing them into your art and into your life is something that's selfish, because you're not doing it for you, or selfless, sorry. You're not doing it for you. You're doing it for the betterment of everybody, not just humanity, but all living beings on this planet.
Yeah, no, I really agree with that aspect of like removing oneself a bit from the art. I also think I had a bit more of like a close-minded idea of what performance was in a way, or I thought of performance more before of like as a deliberate choice, and I see it a bit more fluid now, like existence is performance and everything is a bit of a performance in a way, and nature itself is sort of this enduring existence and this enduring performance, and it's this sort of like energy that's constantly going around that is always there, but it's made me look for it a bit more and appreciate that, and I'm really grateful for that perspective.
Does anyone have any final or closing thoughts before we wrap things up for today? Those were really lovely reflections, kind of exceeded my hopes for what your experience was. I was like, really? You went there? Oh, awesome. Great. I mean, that's great. Okay, cool. Phew. All right. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you guys this semester, and I hope anyone who has like tuned in virtually or stopped by today to watch the presentations get a sense of all the wonderful work you guys have been doing, or who witnesses the recording later on, get a sense of like how awesome things have been. No, I'm kidding. I bet it has been. So thank you again so much. This has been Ecological Scale from the theater department and scenography 398. Thanks again to all the wonderful students and their fantastic work. Clappity, clappity, clap. Yay. Thank you guys. And we are offering this course again next winter, so tell your friends, or if you want, there might be possibility of taking it twice if you're obsessive like that, but it's all good. Thank you guys so much. Have a good evening. Thanks everyone for space. And yeah, have a good one, everyone. Thanks.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you all for coming in today for this amazing series of presentations. Thank you, Mo, for bringing this group to us. Those of you online, we will be closing up the Zoom and the live stream now. But also just a reminder, this does remain available on our YouTube channel if you'd like to visit or share it. Don't forget to join us again.